Hey everyone, today I want to review this amazing book, Creative Perspective for Artists and Illustrators. This is the book that Marshall Vandroff used as a basis for his old perspective course. I don't know if this new perspective course that he has on proco.com uses the same structure, but is a great book if you want to start and expand your knowledge on perspective, especially applied to the illustration process. It has 349 illustrations just in this book. It's crazy. If you look at other books like Framed Environment Design that I've covered here on the channel, a lot of illustrations are made especially to convey the message for the book. So it's something that sometimes we take for granted when we look at those books. So let's emphasize on this and cherish the hard work of these authors that did this amazing job. So as I always like to do, let's go to the table of contents, the index. And this book is divided as such. Materials and procedures to start after a brief introduction. The structural approach of constructing something and breaking down. The square as a unit of measure. So Marshall uses the box, especially the cube, as a basis for everything that he discusses. Loomis does the same, and this book is a big one on this. The picture plane, the cube, so it's the square with same measurements in all the three dimensions. Foreshortening and convergency, the circle, cone, the house of 7 vanishing points. I love this as an example of multiple vanishing points, as well as auxiliary vanishing points for inclined planes and so on. Floor tiles, so if you want to the checker box approach, if you've seen my review on Perspective Made Easy and Frame Perspective 1 and so on, it's more of the same. So there's a lot of redundancy on these books because each of them are tackling perspective isolated. Upstairs and down, up, hue and down, 3 points, reflections, shadows, furniture. So really applying everything that we learn. Universal perspective, figures in perspective, and the problem of the bridge truss. So let's go through it. Beautiful illustrations, as I said. So what is perspective? A big overview with a lot of examples. So the materials and procedures that we're going to need. Sometimes you can use like rulers, especially if you want to be more precise in the beginning when you're learning the concepts. I highly recommend using some rulers so that you don't get lost in the amount of lines that you're using and make wrong assumptions. If you're assuming something in perspective, it's probably wrong. So check that, double check everything that you're assuming when you're studying perspective. The structural approach, so breaking things down. And if you studied dynamic sketching, it's basically breaking down complex structure into more simplified primitive forms. So the cylinder, cone, box, sphere, and the pyramid. And this is basically the structural approach that they're conveying here as well. So deconstructing this into more of a pyramid and cylinder put together. And then all the complexities will come from deconstructing everything. And you can do that with anything. So the square as a unit of measure, as we mentioned before. So especially if you're drawing in 1 point perspective, you can use like this more plan view, orthographic view to measure things and then throw those into perspective. There are some tools to make that happen, but you can do some comparisons even when you're drawing from observation. If you can break down the measurements and put them on paper later on, and studying from orthographics is great of this, it will be super helpful for your entire process. Can break down a lot of complex architecture details into a collection, a combination of different squares and boxes. Here was another really good example as well of something really, really complex. So this idea, it's almost like perspective made easy is bricks and building with bricks, because then we're going to start to put one box or one square on top of each other and help with those measurements when we get to the cube later on. So the picture plane, understanding what the relationship between a plane view and perspective. This can be a little more technical than needed, to be honest. A lot of this was for architects and ones that needed very specific measurements. Then you would do something like this to project a plan view into perspective. Nowadays, if we need something really accurate, we can use 3D and draw on top of that, use a 3D underlay and so on. So I think this kind of mentality, if you can learn, if you need to learn like this, more formal, it's okay. But you could focus just on the cube and placing boxes. This is where the drawing boxes will be super important. And a lot of people question if drawing boxes is really effective. And I highly recommend trying if that's something that will help you along the way. If you can place a box anywhere, especially a cube, you can place a head, you can place architecture, you can place objects, you can place anything in the right perspective. It's hard to do it because normally you're going to use an ellipse to find the cube in perspective, but a lot of that comes down from your perception and really getting the grasp of different angles, conversions, and where the horizon line is and how the lines that are converging are going to meet on the horizon line as well. So for shortening and convergency, more of the basics of perspective. So covering all the concepts that they didn't cover so far, and using a lot of the concepts that they already presented in the rest of the book. So they do cover everything that you need. Then going to the circle, that will be the ellipse, minor axes and major axes, and understanding how those relate to each other and how you're going to use them in perspective to build things that are more complex. You can break this down into a lot of different cylinders that will be circles and ellipses as well. Finding the cube. This is hard stuff. One very good resource is how to draw for this, because Scott Robertson uses a lot of wheels to draw cars. So his book focuses a lot on this kind of mentality. The same in here. So starting to change the angle of stuff as well, in using those cylinders all across. The cone. So now you start with the cylinder, but you combine that to a point. So there is convergency and inclined planes inside a structure that is round. Now we grow into auxiliary vanishing points. So if you have an inclined plane, it will converge to a different point that is above the vanishing point that it would converge if it was not inclined. I know it's hard to understand with just this sentence, but basically if you have a 2-point setup that is converging here and you have that vanishing point on the horizon line, all the inclined planes that are parallel to this direction will converge to the same point, or they need to be parallel themselves above the vanishing point on the horizon line. I think that makes it a little more clear, but for sure if you read the text in here, you will get it. Checker box, looking at some paintings from art history to see that applied. And build interiors, stairs. So the auxiliary vanishing point used to build up stairs. This is a great exercise, especially to control your lines and make sure that you are really clear. That's where the ruler and everything will be super helpful. even different colors of pencils, uphill and downhill, so you don't have the stairs anymore, or maybe you have a combination of a downhill road with some stairs, depending on how the inclination. 3-point perspective, so really important if you're looking up or down. Some of the examples are more like dated in terms of aesthetics, but there are no dated examples in terms of perspective. Maybe the plan view would be something that we wouldn't use as much nowadays, but all the concepts are really flesh and apply to everything that we do. Reflections, you can use that to mirror stuff as well, not just looking at a mirror, but things that are symmetrical. Once you understand reflections, you can really use that. And Scott Robertson's How to Draw is very big on this. And projecting shadows will use all your perspective knowledge to get things accurate. It's a great exercise. And last but not least, growing on complexity, but using the squares and inclined planes as a basis, and circles as well. You can build anything. So drawing furniture around the house and everything will be super helpful for your process of learning. This universal perspective, figures in perspective, and a very complex final, the bridge truss, where you will need everything that we've seen before. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed this review. I hope it got you excited to study more perspective. I don't think this book is in public domain, but you can find it pretty cheaply nowadays. Even if you from secondhand used books, you definitely will get a discount on it. But it's a great resource. So have good studies, have a great day, take care, and I'll see you on other videos.